Hi, it's Chris, and welcome to the ColecoVision High Score Throwdown. This episode, we're going to take a look at a special piece of hardware, the AT Games Colecovision Flashback. Released for the holiday season of 2014, the AT Games Colecovision Flashback is a 60-in-1 mini-console that lets you revisit the glory days of the 80s. AT Games is known for their Atari flashback models, and for 2014 they started to explore the other consoles of the 80s with flashback models of the Intellivision and ColecoVision. The ColecoVision Flashback comes with 2 controllers and 60 built-in games. Of the 60 games, only 14 are original Coleco releases. The ColecoVision Flashback comes with 2 controllers and 60 built-in games. Of the 60 games, only 14 are original Coleco-branded releases. 12 are homebrew titles, and the remaining titles are original third-party titles from the 1980s. The Flashback is running an emulator and outputting a composite video signal with mono sound. The overall effect is a slight change in the aspect ratio of the games, with everything being slightly boxed in and not filling the entire screen. The composite signal looks great and is nice and clean. The colors really pop as well. The same can't be said about the audio, however. Frequently, it is very harsh and borderlines on distorting. The original ColecoVision games ran through the SN76489 chip manufactured by Texas Instruments. On original hardware, sound that this chip makes rarely sounds as rough as the emulation on the Flashback. Whenever you talk about ColecoVision, you have to talk about controllers. The Flashback comes with 2 controllers that are inspired by the stock ColecoVision design. The 2 side buttons, a joystick, and a keypad are all here. This controller has a cheap build quality feel to it, and it shows. Fire buttons are mushy, and the joystick is also mushy and inaccurate. It makes the stock ColecoVision controllers feel almost like a modern controller in comparison. Even though the Flashback controllers are hooked up with a 9-pin D connector, they are incompatible with the stock ColecoVision. One of my controllers was bad out of the box with non-responsive fire buttons. The highlight of the Flashback is the software that is included. In 2014, I had stopped adding carts to my ColecoVision collection. What was included on board was the enticement I needed to buy one. It came with a lot of software that wasn't in my cartridge collection. But the Flashback would end up changing that. I've edited the load screen slightly so the full ColecoVision BIOS delay isn't shown on the following titles, and neither is the game select screen. Don't worry, we're not going to highlight all 60 games in this video. Of the original Coleco release games, I never picked up a copy of Pepper 2, but heard how great it was. The Flashback quickly taught me what a great game it is, but the mushy joystick would lead to lots of missed turns. I soon added Pepper 2 to my cartridge collection. Frenzy had been trending in the $30 range back then, and I never had purchased one. Once again, the ColecoVision showed what a great arcade port Frenzy is, and how it is superior to Berserk in almost every way. Again, a Frenzy cart soon found its way into my collection. Bump and Jump is a more rare title for the ColecoVision. It was a late Coleco 1984 release, and also is designed for expansion module number 2, the steering wheel. It can be played with a standard controller, however. Your job is to race against the other vehicles, jump over ramps and rivers, and survive to the next round. It features some nice smooth scrolling, but sadly, it hasn't joined my collection yet. Choplifter was Dan Gorland's multi-platform helicopter hit from 1982. Originally released on the Apple II, Choplifter would find its way onto most 8-bit systems of the era. The ColecoVision port is solid, but Choplifter still hasn't joined my collection. I actually prefer the Sega Master System version of the excellent Sega arcade port of the game more. Destructor SCE is an interesting title. Destructor was another late Coleco release for the steering wheel. You drive a vehicle that looks like a bulldozer around, hitting bugs that turns them into gems. Then you have to drop the gems into your spaceship to get to the next level. This version was reprogrammed by Steven Seahorn and supports the standard controller. Destructor has annoying sound and unrewarding gameplay. It does feature a very challenging night level on level 5. I admit that the original Destructor has been in my collection since 1984. But honestly, here is the reason I bought the Flashback. Tato's Jungle Hunt, ported by Atari Soft, is here. I can't imagine the legal wrangling that was involved to get this license available on this system. Atari Soft released 3 other titles officially for the ColecoVision: Centipede, Defender, and Galaxians, and they are all great arcade ports that really push the ColecoVision hardware. Jungle Hunt is no exception, and it is arguably the best port of the generation. However, it was Atari Soft's final release as the video game crash happened in 1984. Jungle Hunt is a rare cart and can be quite pricey. This inclusion was worth the price of admission and is one of the most inexpensive ways to enjoy this great coin-op port. Third-party games are well represented on the ColecoVision, and Epyx brought some great games to the platform. Jumpman Jr. is here and is a great, fun platformer. Finding the right game speed to play with is an interesting option. There's a lot of fun platforming here. Epyx is also represented by the terrific Gateway to Apshai action RPG on the Flashback. Some of the best graphics on the ColecoVision were produced by iMagic, and iMagic is well represented on the Flashback. Dragonfire is another rare title that makes the Flashback worth a purchase. However, Dragonfire is saddled with terrible Flashback controllers. Diagonal jumps, a requirement of the game, are almost impossible to execute, and the game feels like it is running maybe a little bit too fast. Fathom, Moonsweeper, Nova Blast, Wing War, and the ultra-rare Tournament Tennis, iMagic's final title, is also on the Flashback. Sierra Online has several games on the Flashback that also appeared on other platforms. Threshold is a very entertaining shooter that brings Activision's Mega Mania to mind. Also here is the entertaining Oil's Well. Thomas J. Mitchell's interesting take on a maze game is a very fun, but the sloppy controller once again makes a game about intricate turns very frustrating. There are other third-party titles on the Flashback, but the glaring omissions from Parker Brothers and Activision bring the collection down a bit. Montezuma's Revenge from Parker Brothers is here, but once again is saddled with a terrible controller, making the experience not fun. What is fun is the fantastic support the Flashback features for homebrew games, and the true highlight on the machine has to be Team Pixel Boy's Mecha 8 by Oscar Gutierrez. A fantastic shooter that feels like an NES game, Mecha 8 is a blast to play. The production level is very high, from title cards to bosses, multiple levels, and more. Plus, I like giant robots, so that's always a bonus. In the end, the AT Games Colecovision Flashback is an interesting bit of gear to add to your collection. I'd recommend it as a low-cost way to get a ColecoVision experience that is somewhat authentic. The best way, which is more expensive, is of course either getting an Atari Max SD cartridge or a Collector Vision Phoenix. 7 years later, my Flashback doesn't get much use. I still use it for Jungle Hunt and the occasional trip to check out a cart that might be missing from my library. This might be a good option for you too. So until next time, game on!